So now let's begin our retreat. I would like to ask everyone to please stay in loving silence. If you can stay on mute until the end, and at the end you will have a chance to share if you would like. If you want, you can use the chat box to share gratitude or inspirational words in between teachers. Each teacher will be leading for about 45 or so minutes. And then in between, we will have a break for loving silence where you can stretch and just take care of yourself. So we'll be starting our retreat in just a moment. Before we do, I'd like to share some inspiring words by Mahatma Gandhi. He said, "I offer you peace. I offer you love. I offer you friendship. I feel your feelings. My wisdom flows from the highest sources. I salute the source in you. Let us work together for unity and love." So with that, our first speaker is our beloved Dr. Kristin Neff. She is the co-founder for CMSC, as well as the co-developer of MSC. She's associate professor in the educational psychology department at the University of Texas in Austin. She's a pioneer in the field of self-compassion research, being the first person to operationalize, define, measure the construct of self-compassion. She's been published widely, including numerous academic articles and book chapters, as well as her best-selling book, Self-Compassion. She's also getting ready to release her newest book in just a few weeks, next month actually. It's called Fierce Self-Compassion: How Women Can Harness Kindness to Speak Up, Claim Their Power, and Thrive. So it's going to be released next month by Harper Wave. So without much ado, I'd like to please invite Dr. Neff to speak.
Thank you, Laila, and thank you, Swati. Yeah, Swati contacted me and Chris about possibly engaging in events for Healing Hands. And it struck me because Laila has been organizing these amazing meditation retreat days that it would just be a really good opportunity to pitch in that way to this wonderful organization. And as you all know, hopefully, we've been practicing self-compassion because, you know, this past year and a half has been really, really, really tough. I would say that the pandemic was good for Amazon, and it was also good for the self-compassion business in the sense that we've needed a lot of it. We've needed a lot of self-compassion just to get through. And I don't know about you all, but you know, it's a very interesting time because I've had to use self-compassion to help through my own struggles. You know, my son was at home, you know, so much stress, so much going on, so much fear about, will this ever end? And then finally we see the light of the tunnel, especially those of us who've been fortunate enough to get vaccinations. And it's almost like we can come up for air, and then we start looking around us. And, you know, places like India, so many places in the world, I mean, it's just starting, the full brunt of the pandemic is just starting to really fully hit other countries. And, you know, I feel very fortunate to be in a position where we can now turn our compassion not only inward, but also outward. And it's also really appropriate because as Laila mentioned, I've got this new book coming out, Fierce Self-Compassion. And my work lately has been on fierce self-compassion. And it's very relevant also to events like this. You know, sometimes the mindfulness movement or even the self-compassion movement, we get some criticism for being too focused on cultivating inner peace, inner well-being. I don't think the criticism is really justified, but I understand where that criticism comes from, because sometimes it feels as if all we're doing with the mindfulness practice or a self-compassion practice is focusing on opening our own heart, cultivating our own well-being. But of course, if you really go to the root of the practice, compassion, even to say it's focused on self or other, in some ways doesn't even make sense anymore. Because if you really look into the heart of compassion, what it illuminates is interconnection, right? What it illuminates is the fact that no one is separate from one another. So just as we can't exclude ourselves from the circle of compassion, that's not seen wisely. We're human beings too. Neither can we really focus inward and not outward. So it really is just a waking up to seeing the big picture of how we're all in this together. And so that's one way in which we kind of transcend duality, you might say, when we recognize that we aren't separate from others, that there's this larger interbeing. And another duality, you might say, that self-compassion transcends is the one I've been playing with lately, which is the difference between fierce and tender self-compassion. So tender self-compassion, and by the way, these ideas come from both Chris and I. We've been playing with them together for a few years now, and I've been focusing on it a lot with my new book. Tender self-compassion is really the ability to be with ourselves and our lives as they are. It's really unconditional acceptance. Again, unconditional self-acceptance, unconditional acceptance of the fact that life is difficult. And a lot of contemplative practice focuses on acceptance, right? And tender self-compassion is acceptance with a lot of love in our hearts for ourselves and others. But sometimes, if you think of what compassion is concern with the alleviation of suffering. And sometimes we alleviate our suffering through acceptance. We stop fighting ourselves, we stop judging ourselves, we stop resisting pain in life. And that actually helps reduce our suffering. But sometimes, in order to alleviate suffering, we have to not accept what is. We have to be fierce. We have to take action, right? And the concept of fierce compassion also comes from Buddhism. This is the idea that in order to alleviate suffering, sometimes we need to be brave. Sometimes we need to stand up to injustice. Sometimes we need to protect ourselves or protect others. This is also a very important aspect of the open heart. And so compassion is not just about cultivating personal well-being or opening to what is. That's part of the equation. But at the same time, very, very key is that we're willing to stand up and do what's necessary to change circumstances for the better. And so whether that's protesting, whether that's voting, or whether that's engaging in events like this, where we actually come together as a collective and we pool our power and our resources to help others. That's also a very important part of compassion. And it's interesting, so Mahatma Gandhi was mentioned. And of course, Mahatma Gandhi, he was really one of the most famous people to talk about the integration of fierce and tender self-compassion, right? The idea that we gain the most power when we integrate it with love, right? His whole approach to things was, it was more than just nonviolence. It was kind of the force of love. When we really open our hearts, it's very powerful and it leads to concrete actions to alleviate suffering. And so that's what we are doing here today, and also what I'm going to be doing in the meditation I lead. So this is a meditation I created that I really adapted it from a practice in the Mindful Self-Compassion program, which is called Compassionate Friend. Some of you may have even done this meditation before, where it's actually a guided visualization. And I adapted it slightly so that we use the ability of our imagination to imagine someone who really embodies what I like to call caring force. For me, that's the term that really encapsulates what happens when we're fully owning our tenderness, our tender heart, our accepting heart, with our fierceness, our willingness to make change and do something in the world. caring force. So we're going to do this meditation to come up with an image of a being that encapsulates caring force, and then see what happens. Okay, so please close your eyes. If you feel comfortable, you can also just cast your eyes downward and adopt a position that you can hold. We'll do this for about a little under half an hour. We're going to go till the 15 minutes before the hour. And just let your body relax, just consciously maybe relax your facial muscles, relax your shoulders. See if you can relax any tension you're holding in your body. So we want to be relaxed, but we also want to be upright, right? This is kind of almost, even in our posture, we want to integrate the fierce and tender. So let your body be soft and relaxed, but also holding it upright energetically. Find that point of balance. Perhaps making sure that your both feet are touching the floor so you feel grounded. Right. And begin to turn inward. So just noticing how your body is feeling right now. Feeling your body. It may help to notice the touch points, like the feeling of your feet touching the floor, or the weight of your body on the chair. Feeling the groundedness of your body. Now beginning to notice the sensations, the physical sensations of your breathing. Feeling that gentle movement of the breath. And your mind will start to wander naturally. It's what the brain does. And so as you bring your attention back, see if you can incorporate this caring force, right? So be firm, firmly bring your attention back, but also with great tenderness and gentleness, just like you might use with a little toddler who'd wandered off. You need to be firm. Hey, you can't wander off. It's not okay. We need you to be where you need to be. With no judgment, no harshness, just goodwill, kindness. Okay, so bringing your attention back with this caring force, when it starts to wander. Again, just focusing on the movement of the breath. You may even notice it's like a gentle internal rocking motion of the breath. Letting yourself be soothed, but also supported by this movement of the breath. And then again, paying attention to your posture. We want to be upright, hold ourselves with some strength. Back upright, but not tense. So see if you can actually hold your body with this fierceness and tenderness, with this caring force. As Joan Halifax says, strong back, soft front. And so now I would invite you to imagine. We're going to call in some visualization here. I would invite you to imagine that you are in a place in which you feel very safe. Right? You feel comfortable. You feel relaxed. This may be a place that you know, maybe you've got a room in your house where you just feel at home, right? So that real sense of home. Maybe your fireplace, you maybe have a living room with a fireplace and you're sitting there, you might imagine that. Maybe you actually are there if you're home. Or maybe it's somewhere else. Maybe you are in a forest glade, right? With birds singing, sunshine filtering through the trees. Or maybe you're on a beach. Or perhaps a completely imaginary place floating on clouds. See if what you can do is let go of trying to think this place or design this place, and see if the image of this place can just emerge, a place where you feel safe and comfortable, alert, but at peace. Just see if you can really enjoy being in this place. And soon you are going to have a visitor, right? And this visitor, we're going to call your fierce friend. So this is a being that really embodies strength, courage, bravery, right? Kind of a warrior energy, does not allow for any harm to occur, both in the world and also to you. So a real protective energy. Right? That's the fierce side. But this being is also very tender and loving, right? Loves you, loves the world, has a tender, compassionate heart. Right? This being fully embodies integration of both energies of yin and yang, fierceness and tenderness, embodies caring force. And again, see what image comes to mind. Maybe you've known someone like this. Maybe you had a grandmother who was just a pillar of strength for you in your life. So loving. Or maybe it's someone that you know of and admire, but never met. Maybe someone like Gandhi, who's not even living anymore. Or maybe someone who is living, someone you just really admire for embodying these qualities. Maybe it's someone completely imaginary. Right? This could be, a warrior goddess, perhaps. Or maybe an animal like a jaguar, or some animal that really embodies fierceness and tenderness. Really just see what image comes to mind. Again, try not to design it logically, just let it emerge. And if you aren't very visual, that's okay. Maybe it's just a sense of this being. Or some light, the glowing light. It doesn't have to be so detailed. Just see what emerges in your mind's eye. And so, as I said, your fierce friend is going to pay you a visit. Right? And so you can choose where you're going to meet your friend. Maybe you go out of your safe place to some new place to meet your fierce friend. Or maybe you invite them in. Right? But imagining yourself with this being, right? So imagine yourself, actually imagine an image of yourself with this being at just the right distance. And if it's your grandmother, maybe you're holding her hand. If it's a jaguar, maybe there's a little respectful distance. Right? So just but imagining, calling up an image of yourself and your fierce friend. Really allowing yourself to imagine what it feels like to be in the presence of such a being. The power of this being. The courage. The deep commitment to prevent harm. To fight for justice. To protect you. And see if you can even just tap into this being's fierceness. It's awesome. Wondrous. It might even be a little scary, except for the fact, the reason it's not scary is because this being is also so tender and loving. Right? The heart of this being is so open. So understanding, so compassionate. Right? Compassionate and loving to every being in the world, including you. This is the source of the power and the bravery, this desire to love, to care for, to protect. So see if you can allow yourself to feel the loving presence of this being. This caring force. And this being, your fierce friend, is very wise, right? Very wise. Sees clearly. Sees the past, the present, and the future. Would like to tell you something. This being would like to give you a message. Right? Some message that you really need to hear right now at this point in your life. Right? There may be some words of tenderness, right? Understanding of your pain. What you've been through or what you're going through now. And so perhaps hearing these words of tenderness, validation, deep care. But perhaps also some words that are a little more fierce, right? Maybe this being sees some places in your life where it'd be helpful if you stood up for yourself or drew some boundaries or took some brave action. Right? And this may be in your own life, and perhaps also in the world. Maybe there's something you are being called to do, some action you are being called to do in the world. And this being wants you to encourage you, right? Wants to encourage you to take this fierce action, to be brave, to go for it. This being perhaps also your fierce friend would also perhaps like to give you a gift, right? Some symbolic object that really symbolizes this integration of fierceness and tenderness, of caring force. Right? Some symbolic object which is just unique to you. Maybe it doesn't even make sense, but it's some object that is meaningful for you in some way. Right? Maybe it just appears in your hand or in front of you. And if nothing appears, that's okay too. Maybe the gift is simply the presence of your fierce friend. And so see if you can really allow yourself to fully take in this caring force. Let yourself fully feel it, the power and the love. And of course, realizing that this fierce friend is actually a part of you, right? Everything you've been feeling, visualizing, hearing, sensing, this all has come from you. right? This is part of your own fierce and tender heart. This is an aspect of yourself. So you can let the image fade away, kind of gradually dissolve. But knowing, really having the strength and knowledge that this is a part of you. So whenever you need it, whenever you need this fierceness or this tenderness or both, right? Whenever you need your fierce friend, you can recall this image. Or the gift if you got one. You can call this image to remind yourself that this is a part of your true nature. So now letting go of any imagery, and just while your eyes are still closed, please just feel your body. And coming back to the here and now, feeling your feet on the floor. Weight of your body on the chair. Noticing anything that's occurring in your body. You might be feeling some movement of energy or emotions or sensations. And so simply allowing yourself to be exactly as you are in this moment. And then let out a big breath and open your eyes. Okay. So we're going to have a 15-minute break. You may want to cover your camera if you want, or you can keep it on. Unfortunately, I have another event I need to go to in 15 minutes, so I won't be able to share the day with you. But I am very glad I got to spend this time with you. And I hope you all have a beautiful rest of your retreat and a beautiful day and a beautiful life. Thank you. And thank you so much for showing up.
Thank you, Dr. Neff.